Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our daily Bible study where we cover one chapter of the Bible every day. We are in the midst of the book of Proverbs, and we're on chapter 13 today. If you want our free PDF, you can download it at tobelikechrist.com. And there's one for every chapter of Proverbs and several of the books of the Bible. We've got about half of the books of the Bible done at this point, or I should say half of the chapters of the Bible done. So those PDFs are out online, and let's talk about Proverbs 13, beginning with our outline. So we broke Proverbs down into three sections. The first one, the way of folly versus the way of wisdom. That's the first 9 chapters. Now we're in the Proverbs of Solomon, which will take us through chapter 29. And then we have the last 2 chapters, 30 and 31, the Proverbs of Augur and Lemuel. Moving down to the definition section, I got 2 words I wanted to define today. The first one is insolence. Or insolent. An insolent person is someone who's lacking proper respect. And then in verse 16, we have once again the word prudent, or prudence, acting carefully, moving through life cautiously and thoughtfully. And in Proverbs, prudence is portrayed as an aspect of somebody who is wise. Down at the bottom here, we have our interpretive principle, which will help us to understand Proverbs. As you read the book, it's important to keep in mind that the Proverbs discuss principles, not necessarily promises. These wise statements are general truths, not absolutes. As we've been doing today, we want to highlight a couple of the Proverbs from chapter 13. So I've got 3 selected here to highlight. The first one appears in verse 13. Whoever despises the word brings destruction on himself, but he who reveres the commandment will be rewarded. So in Solomon's day, the people of Israel had the instructions of God, which were written down for them, which were revealed to Moses on Mount Sinai. Today, we have even more of God's words recorded for us in the completed Bible that the Holy Spirit has given to us. Solomon warns us not to reject God's words or his instructions, otherwise we're going to find nothing but destruction. Now, this is a pretty practical principle, pretty practical statement of advice, but it's often neglected. But it does make sense if you think about it. When the creator of your world gives you instructions about how you're supposed to live on his world, and you reject them, well, you can't really expect things to go well for you, can you? So we want to be that person who reveres the commandments of God. Proverb number 2 comes from verse 20. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Wise friends will make you wise. Foolish friends will turn you into a fool. The company that you keep really matters. I know sometimes we think it doesn't, like, I can be my own person. Not everyone around me is going to affect me, but the company that you keep really matters. Paul wrote, bad company ruins good morals, 1 Corinthians 15:33. Christian friends will worship with you, study with you, discuss God with you, fight temptation with you, and together you'll grow up to be more mature and wiser people. Worldly friends, people who have no respect or love for God, they won't do any of those things with you. In fact, they'll distract you from those things. They'll distract you from becoming a wiser person. You may be able to keep your life pure when you're surrounded by unbelieving friends, but it's going to be a challenge. And I think the real question here is, why would you choose to do that when you can walk through life with people who will support your purity, make you wiser, and draw you closer to God? The choice there is pretty clear, at least it should be. Now this takes us to Proverb number 3, which appears in verse 24, somewhat well-known proverb. Whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. The one who loves his child will discipline them and will be diligent in administering that discipline. The one who doesn't love their child will withhold discipline. They won't discipline at all. When done right, discipline is a positive corrective action. We learned this actually in the last proverb, Proverbs 12, verse 1, where it talks about how a wise man grows up to love discipline because it matures him. It helps him grow. It helps him correct his mistakes. He becomes a better man for it. So he loves discipline. And when discipline is administered right, it can be positive in correcting someone and steering someone, a child in this case, in the way that they need to go. In many modern cultures, disciplining children has been framed in a bad light, as if it's a tool that's only used by parents who have failed to understand their children, have failed to understand their emotional complexity or the elements of their personality. But Solomon and the writer of the book of Hebrews especially would, I think, reject this framing. In Hebrews chapter 12, 6 and 7, the author of Hebrews writes this about God. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? God implements discipline to correct and to develop his children, to develop Christians, his followers. I certainly hope no one would suggest that God disciplines his children because he fails to understand their emotional complexity. God understands human nature perfectly and finds discipline to be a necessary and healthy part of the development of a soul. That's our study for today in Proverbs chapter 13. Let me know if you have any thoughts about any of the other Proverbs in this chapter, maybe some applications that we can take from those or ones that stood out to you. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about Proverbs 14. Until then, I hope you have a great day.